Welcome back to America Right Now. I'm Tom Basili. At noon on January 20th at the United States Capitol, a sad chapter of American history will come to an end. Americans will turn the page on the administration of Joseph R. Biden, but the aftermath of his failed presidency leaves behind a trail of human suffering that will haunt millions at home and abroad. The philosopher Sun Tzu once said, "An evil man will burn his own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes." My fellow Americans, that's Joe Biden. America's 46th president will leave office having racked up a body count usually associated with dictators and banana republic strongmen. First, Mr. Biden empowered the jihadists by surrendering Afghanistan to terrorists whose brutality is responsible for public executions, hundreds of extrajudicial killings, the deaths of thousands of American allies and contractors, and thousands of other casualties as well. When it comes to the rights of women and girls, the Taliban's leadership, which continues to benefit from billions in U.S. aid, is the most oppressive in the world. The World Bank estimated that Afghanistan lost more than a quarter of its real GDP in 2021 and 2022 alone. According to the International Crisis Group, millions of Afghans have slipped into poverty since the Taliban's return, and many of them are facing starvation.
The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
But of course, there were 13 U.S. service members killed during the disastrous withdrawal, despite Mr. Biden's denials that any troops died under his watch. Next, the largest war in Europe since World War II is another sad legacy of Joe Biden. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin may have ordered the invasion, but it was Joe Biden's complete lack of strategic deterrence that set the stage for all the carnage.
I'm not so sure he is certain what he's going to do. My guess is he will move in. He has to do something.
Mr. Biden's vacillation and disjointed approach to the threat of Russian troops along the border basically rolled out the welcome mat for the imperial Mr. Putin. As vice president, Biden did nothing to support the Ukrainians after the invasion of Crimea. He's now allowed Putin to all but destroy the second largest country in Europe. Since the beginning of Mr. Biden's war, the total number of Ukrainian and Russian troops killed or wounded tops 500,000. The combat has resulted in over 30,000 civilian casualties and more than 10 million displaced. Upon taking office, Joe Biden lifted sanctions against Iran, signaled that he would revisit the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. He removed the Houthis from the terror list and sent hundreds of millions of dollars to the Palestinians. In May of 2021, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki dismissed President Trump's Abraham Accords.
Aside from putting forward a peace proposal that was dead on arrival, we don't think they did anything constructive, really, to bring an end to the long-standing conflict in the Middle East.
That very weekend, Hamas launched 4,000 rockets into Israel. 2 years later, Hamas would stage the October 7th massacre, sparking a war that has now claimed the lives of more than 46,000 people on both sides. At home, Mr. Biden's border policies resulted in a human calamity so massive that they surpass American military casualties sustained during World War I. First, the expansion of drug trafficking because of the open border has seen the cartels operate with near impunity in cities and towns all across America. Biden knew full well that the vast majority of fentanyl comes across the southern border. The number of Americans who have died from fentanyl, including estimates for 2024, is more than 292,000 people. In addition to the drug overdose figures, some 60 homicides and manslaughters were attributed to illegal immigrants in Biden's first year. That was a 1,900% increase from the last year of the Trump administration. Biden must have been encouraged, secretly flying and busing illegals on the taxpayer dime into the backyards of nearly every American.
Our border is secure.
Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office.
Do you continue to maintain that the border is secure?
Yes.
Look, let's get something in mind about the border. When I became president, the numbers came way down.
Yeah, they came way down. In the last 3 years of the administration, of course, headlines became increasingly common, showing mugshots of illegals arrested for murder and sexual violence. Among the most recent and the most horrifying, the illegal who set a sleeping woman on fire in the New York City subway. He had been deported during Trump's first term. He returned under Joe Biden. Over the 4-year period, hundreds of murders have been committed by illegals. The Biden body count also includes not just Americans, but illegal migrants as well. In the first 2 years of the Biden presidency, more than 1,000 attempting to cross the border died. Another 500 plus in 2023. And of course, more than 300,000 children were lost or unaccounted for. But of course, replacing Democrat voters and exploiting the welfare rolls to justify expanding the administrative state was apparently worth all of the fiscal chaos, crime, human suffering, and death. None of these estimates, of course, consider the high cost of Biden's nonsensical vaccine mandates and his administration peddling misinformation to justify Democrat-supported lockdowns during the pandemic. More than 750,000 Americans died from COVID-19 or had the virus at the time of death during Biden's term. There is no telling how many of them would have been saved by public health policies that were based on sound science rather than political science.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
Incredible. Mr. Biden's COVID policies shuttered hundreds of thousands of businesses and created an epidemic of learning loss and academic delays for a generation of school children. Democrats under Biden used the pandemic to execute an unconstitutional censorship regime, destroy reputations, and spend trillions that contributed significantly to 40-year high inflation. All told, Mr. Biden's policies, shaped by his leftist handlers, have likely cost an estimated 1 million lives at home and abroad. And this is by no means a dispositive accounting. But even a short review of the carnage makes one understand how Mr. Biden could so cheerfully award the Presidential Medal of Freedom to the likes of George Soros. Make no mistake, the fact that the impact of all of this is so hard to fully calculate is precisely the reason the American left believes that they will continue to get away with murder by proxy. We can never allow the kind of disregard for human life, the law, basic decency, and the Constitution to wreak havoc from the White House again. We can never wake up wondering who is really running the country. It's a lesson for all of us in this moment, but particularly Democrats, whose blind hatred for Donald Trump allowed the installation of a mentally diminished automaton who would do the bidding of our enemies from behind the resolute desk. Americans, as we turn the page from this calamity, we can never forget. Much more America Right Now.